Hello YouTube, this is Morgan Airspeed Prime here with my next Boruto 2 Blue Vortex manga chapter review. This one's going to be for chapter 17, which is called Wild Beast Cubs. Overall, I thought that this was a pretty good chapter. Not what I expected really at all. I expected us to jump into the action a little bit more, progress some of the other plots more. But I think the new unexpected angle they're taking to the Matsuri and Ryu conflict is very intriguing to me, and I actually quite like it from a development of the Divine Tree characters, as entities perspective. And I think it's actually going to give us an opportunity to, like, for instance, give Konohamaru some good time in the spotlight, because he's now not just fighting Matsuri, he's actually getting a chance to talk to her a lot more. And so we'll get some, I think, good characterization from a character like him, who definitely needs some focus overall. So, that's good. And then it's not that there was no progress. I at least appreciated that by the end of the chapter, they did touch on Kawaki going to Amado. So even though it's maybe taken a little bit longer than we expected to get there, the setup is there. Maybe next time out, next chapter, we're gonna jump into that. So overall, pretty good stuff. A little bit of recap that's a bit frustrating maybe at the start, but once we got into the details of the main conflict, I was pretty in and kind of hooked on the new approach. So let's get into it here. So we open up with the cover page, which obviously covers the idea, chapter 17, Wild Beast Cubs. We have Yodo and Araya on the cover, of course, so nice to see them in color after their recent kind of reintroductions. But we jump into the chapter itself then with probably the weakest part of the chapter, which is the opening 2 pages, which to me effectively don't add anything to the chapter at all. Because if you're reading this like in the volumes, I get technically there's a transition between the end of one volume into this being the first chapter of a new volume, but still, some of this stuff was literally pages ago. Like, this is not from multiple chapters ago. This is stuff Sumire said in the last chapter, and it's just Sarada reflecting on it, which she was already doing in the last chapter. The only difference here is that they show the hug as like a flashback panel. They show Mitsuki looking at her, but I think we saw that again also in the previous one, and then Yodo also made a comment to her about it. So the first 2 pages just feel like unnecessary recap. Thankfully, the rest of the chapter is a lot kind of better overall. So we cut to Matsuri and Ryu. We established that Matsuri gets information from the trees, where she figures out that Boruto himself placed the toad here, so he was definitely here. She mentions that there are trees, even though they're in a desert, that are underground. So that's her explanation there. We then cut to our kind of, hero characters here, watching them from afar, and we establish that Yodo here is listening in on them with her kind of sensitive hearing here. I'll be honest, I completely forget what her kind of moveset actually is as a character, just because it was so long ago when we got to see anything with her in like the anime at this point. But anyway, they're just establishing she's listening in to what they're saying. She relays this to Konohamaru, saying that she has sensory type abilities and that they know they're after Boruto basically as well. So Konohamaru takes this as a case of like, okay, she's going to find us eventually, so we're going to have to go ahead with the plan. And we as the audience, don't know what the plan is just yet. We're going to get caught up with that shortly. But everyone's like, are you ready? Yes, I think so. We do establish that Sarada is a little bit distracted, again, of course. But then also, we get Yodo kind of really highlighting, hey, can we get Shinki back by defeating Ryu and getting a hold of his thorn bulb? And according to the intel, that is correct. And she's very dedicated to this part of the mission. And her teammate is even like, don't do anything reckless in order to get him back. But she's just like, I will do whatever it takes to rescue Shinki. And they have a little bit of an argument, to which Konohamaru is a bit like, is this going to affect the team if we get into fighting? But she's like, no, we're always like this, kind of bickering back and forth. It won't affect the mission. So I think there's a clear sense probably that she's coming at this from a perspective of, okay, it's her teammate, but also I get the impression there's a bit of romantic feelings there as well. I think that's part of why they brought up in the last chapter the whole idea of Yodo kind of being the first one to kind of realize that probably part of why Sarda is so distracted is because of kind of romantic feelings about a boy as well. But we'll get to that, I suppose. So yeah. Does everyone understand the plan? Yes, though Mitsuki wonders if it's actually going to work, but they're going to go ahead with it. So what the plan is that the Leaf Shinobi, not the Sand Shinobi, walk down and introduce themselves. They act like they don't know who they're walking up to. And so Konohamaru just plays it cool as the leader and is like, hey, we're Konoha Shinobi. We've been following the rebel Boruto's trail. What about you guys? And Ryu is like, oh, they don't know who we are. What's the plan, Matsuri? But in a shocking twist, Matsuri is completely smitten by Konohamaru. So we see that she's blushing and is having trouble kind of like breathing, kind of composing herself here after seeing Konohamaru, who, of course, is her target, but we pretty much directly get the confirmation, which was heavily in the speculation before this, that the targets of these characters are the targets because of feelings from the original person trapped in the tree towards the target, and the way that transfers over seems to be this. So even though I don't think this chapter directly says that the reason Matsuri has a crush on Konohamaru is because of Moegi, I think it is heavily implied that that is the case. But maybe they are also addressing that this could be just an individual kind of quirk of each of the kind of characters as individuals. Just because like Hidari didn't seem to show that much of a focus on Sarda outside of it's my target, I want to kind of consume her kind of type thing. So I'm not sure about what the exact takeaway from this actually is, because we'll find out in just a second that like Shikamaru knows this from Kashin Koji, that this is part of the future information that he's got, is like the details of Matsuri's kind of feelings, basically. So she feels so off. She's like, hey Ryu, you do the talking here. And he's a bit taken aback by this because he's the youngest one. Why is he leading when she is clearly one of the first group of them, of course. So we cut to Shikamaru previously explaining to Konohamaru kind of key details of the mission. One is that basically it's not just to take out these characters, the Divine Tree characters, it's also to collect their thorn bulbs, soul thorn bulbs. We addressed that what these are, if you forgot, is the thing that came out of Hidari when he was defeated. And Shikamaru confirms to us here that yes, if you return the soul thorn bulb back to the tree, that's how you free one of the characters. So Matsuri will restore Moegi, Ryu will restore Shinki, and so on. This is part of the kind of mechanism, but also that, hey, you have to keep a hold of it once you kind of gain access to it. Otherwise, it will basically fly back home and they can be resurrected, as we saw with Hidari, and they kind of confirm that as well. So just as addressing now that we know what the situation is, this is how we should handle fighting them. Defeat them, but then you have to be in a position to grab the thorn bulb and keep a hold of it to get it back to where the tree actually is. So there is a bit of kind of logistics kind of traveling around that is needed. So that's an important detail here. So Konohamaru then asks, how did you come by this intel? Because basically this is more than came out of interrogating Boruto. How do you have all this extra stuff? And Shikamaru has to kind of lie about this because he's not going to reveal an out Kashin Koji. And it's just like, hey, it's beyond your clearance level. Trust me, I've verified this information. Do you have a problem with me not revealing everything? And Konohamaru says no. We do get the subtle reveal of like the toad on Shikamaru's shoulder. But he then explains, this is the strategy for this mission. This is how you should fight it. Fight them based on the information that I have. And that is that, hey, this is where the title chapter of the chapter comes into play. They're monsters, they have super high combat abilities, but they are also kind of new as kind of individual beings, basically. He points out that we don't have any confirmation that they're just inherently, intrinsically evil. They seem similar to newly born offspring of wild beasts. Wild beast cubs, basically. That he doesn't believe they have true evil intent, and that most of the time that they are just acting on instinct. So if they're in a fight, of course, you will see their strength come out. Like, they can still follow orders and stuff like that. But you can actually manipulate them because as intelligent beings, they're kind of new, they're naive. Effectively, he's kind of pointing out here is like, use your other skills as a shinobi to your advantage. That being the kind of subterfuge, like having to play a role, act, be stealthy in these type of situations. That's what you need to do. Become friends with them, win them over, tame them while they're still kind of innocent cublings, and then betray them. That's how you're going to get the advantage here, because this is how they're addressing the idea of, wait, how did these 5 characters against these 2 Divine Tree characters make any sense to be a victory? Well, of course, we're going to have to do some sort of manipulation, splitting them up and taking one of them by surprise somehow. It's just, I don't think we fully knew that, like, oh, there is this kind of level of almost like innocent kind of naivety to the Divine Tree characters, maybe outside of Jura. The other ones, you can take advantage of them like this. So yeah, get them to drop their guard so you can kill them. Naruto probably wouldn't take this route, but I proposed this tactic, of course. We need to do this for the survival of humankind. So I like kind of strategist Shikamaru coming out some more here, using the information from Kashin Koji well. And yeah, we cut back to, okay, now we know what's going on. What's the dynamic like on the battlefield? And yeah, Konohamaru is just like, hey, introducing everyone. Who are you? And he's like, I'm Ryu. This is Elder Matsuri. Are you okay? And she still is blushing, doesn't know how to react in or around Konohamaru. We see that Yodo and Araya are still staying back because, again, Matsuri would recognize those 2 because she fought them before. So they're making sure to keep that like information kind of in the right way. So yeah, he's just like, nice to meet you. Have you also been searching for Boruto too? Our goals are the same. Let's join up and do this. And Ryu gets confirmation from Matsuri that, yeah, we can definitely do that, of course. And they immediately get on their side by doing some investigation, kind of knowing that, hey, we have a little bit of information that we can give away about Boruto, but we're not actually going to help you find Boruto, but it will get us on your side. And it's like, oh, that's the spy toad. We already know about that. Then Mitsuki finds one of Boruto's kind of metal pieces off in the distance, and they're like, oh, wow, that's new. I didn't know about that. We might find some other clues. Why don't we comb the area? Let's split up. And Konohamaru is like, Sarada, Mitsuki, you check over there. And Ryu goes with them. And Konohamaru kind of singles out Matsuri as the kind of characters left behind there. So we, of course, find out in just a second that this is extremely purposeful to kind of utilize this connection to his advantage, which is going to be a fun dynamic. But he's like, oh, you're Matsuri, right? What's the matter? Are you not feeling well? And yeah, I'm having trouble breathing. What's wrong with me? As we see Sarada calling Ryu over, of course. And he's really enthusiastic. He's just like, oh, wow, we might find new information. Let's go. Mitsuki's even like, oh, there are other comrades over there as well. Let's go to them. I'll introduce you. Which Ryu, I guess, wouldn't know the other 2 because he was created afterwards. So he didn't fight Yodo and Araya. But through the Shinki connection, would he know who they are overall? His target's Gaara. I'm guessing they'll find a way around this. We'll see what exactly they go about doing. But yeah, that is the situation here. So we've split everyone up kind of correctly overall. And then Ryu is just like, yeah, you seem like really nice people, just like I was told. Elder Jura is full of respect for you. Oh, he's our boss man. I honestly, I'd been intending to slaughter any ninja I ran into, so I'm glad we spoke first. And she's just like, oh, don't say stuff like that. So there is still that sense of, this needs to be a very good act, a very good performance, because this could switch like that into a full-on fight, and they don't really have the advantage in that case. We do quickly to Yodo and Araya reflecting on this. Hang in there, Shinki. We'll act soon, basically. And then, yeah, here is the further details of specifically with Konohamaru, what he needs to do. Shikamaru is talking again. The reason I picked you for this mission is because, hey, do you know why you're Matsuri's target? It's because she bears romantic feelings towards you. And Konohamaru's like, what? But obviously Matsuri is not aware of this, or rather she has no idea what the emotion she's feeling is. So this is going to put her in a state of turmoil. That will probably give us an edge, and we need to use that to our advantage, basically. Be heartless, they're our enemy. He does point out that if both of them turn up, it will be tricky, but you will have to find a way to separate them, which is what has actually happened. Just pointing out, like, hey, be friendly, introduce yourself, but take control of the situation, which is exactly what has happened here. He's alone with Matsuri, and now he can use that to his advantage here. And yeah, they go to sit down together and talk. So they are sitting right next to each other. She still is dealing with her emotions and feelings. And she's like, this isn't like me. Are you sure about that? And Konohamaru's like, I don't think it's necessarily weird for you to get this way, And she's still freaking out as we cut away to Ada, who's about to listen in on this conversation. But she wants confirmation from Kashin Koji that, is it okay? What if Mamushi listens in on me and looks at me again? And it's just pointed out that, no, you'll be focused in on a conversation elsewhere. You won't be in the same vicinity as Mamushi. So yeah, that's the situation there. And then we cut to Boruto with Kashin Koji. And the idea is like, okay, how's it going? It's going pretty well so far. They have separated them. Konohamaru's keeping Matsuri occupied, and the others ideally will be able to take Ryu down first and then come back and help Konohamaru to defeat Matsuri. So that's the kind of overall plan. He wants to know what's the percentage chance that they fail, and he wants a number, but he just points out, Boruto, don't interfere. Just like with Himawari leaving Konoha, if you were to take part in this battle, Jura would make a move, and that would result in your death, basically. You are the one thing we can't lose. So that's interesting. Again, this is what they pointed out in the previous chapter. It's the idea that Jura won't interfere if the fights are kept to a minimal number of people and no one super important is involved in them. So I'm guessing this is what is going to prevent Boruto from being an easy maybe win in any of these fights. He has to be kept until the strike probably against Jura specifically overall. So that's the situation that we have here. But we then cut to what was the preview page for this chapter. Jura in the Konoha bookshop here, just picking out a bunch of books overall. Shikamaru is alerted to his presence because they matched his chakra data overall. And again, the plan is what they said in the last chapter. Don't evacuate civilians, leave them alone, act cool, act relaxed. Jura actually pays for the books. He puts down a whole stack of cash and is like, hey, hold the change. It's an advance for any future purchases. And the shopkeeper's just like, as you wish. I look forward to seeing you again, sir. And I guess Jura heads off with his book. So he seems unconcerned about anything potentially going on. But again, no fights have officially started yet, so we haven't really seen if he's alerted to anything going on. Just that, hey, he is off over here. He's technically in the village, and he's out of the way, I guess, for now. And then the chapter ends with 2 pages here. It is Amado just checking up on some stuff. Kawaki comes over, immediately slams him up against the wall with his kind of crazy arm. And Amado's like, I thought you might be dropping by. And he just says, I've got tons I want to say to you, but first you're going to draw out all of my powers to their fullest extent. So again, this is the entire point of why these two need to have this conversation. The details, though, is where this is actually going to kind of come out. Obviously, we know Amado is capable of doing this. We've seen him do it before. We need to see what the full scope of his powers actually are. But I think probably more importantly, at least to me, more interestingly, I want to see Amado explain some stuff about the whole Akebi situation. Probably explaining that is why he did this. Make sure that Kawaki has good defensive capabilities, but is not powerful enough to fight in other battles. We'll see what exactly happens with that. Is he going to want to, like, hey, you give me my daughter back in exchange for me doing this right now? Is the timing right for that? Or is this just going to happen because he's been threatened? Or is there something else that Amado has kind of planned to kind of keep himself in the game here? Hard to say, but he remains a super interesting character, Amado, just because so much sort of revolves around him. That is such a mystery overall. But yeah, that is the end of the chapter. Like I said, I really like the choice to make the kind of conflict with Matsuri and Ryu a little bit more kind of personal focus, like really playing into the idea of they're newly kind of intelligent beings. Let's use that to our advantage, that we can use our skills in sort of like manipulation to get them into the positions that we want, and basically have the fight take place on our terms, basically. And I'm assuming that's what we kind of have to do here. I'm guessing at the very least we will defeat one of these characters. Will it go as smoothly as we think it will? I'm not really sure. Like, the setup for the plan seems to be that Ryu should be able to be defeated by Sarada, Mitsuki, and the two Sand Shinobi. And then they could turn the tables on Matsuri, who's maybe more powerful. Will it go as smoothly as that? Or will we end up doing it in kind of reverse, where maybe Matsuri is maybe the one we take out first? But I've always felt like we can't do the Matsuri stuff just yet, because we need probably Team Inoshika Cho involved overall, just because they're the ones with the strong connection to their kind of team leader. But they're giving Shikamaru the focus, and he is her target. So maybe we don't need to involve Inoshika Cho, but we'll see what the plan is. At the very least, you know, with the setup with like Yodo and Araya wanting to get Shinki back, maybe we are just doing the simple thing. Maybe they're not trying to overly kind of lead us astray here. Maybe Ryu just will go down. He's newly formed, but that means he is the most vulnerable to the manipulations, and we can use him as an example before we take out the more kind of established Divine Tree characters. So yeah, there's a lot that needs to happen here. Like, Gara needs to be got out, I think. So they have to plan things kind of effectively here in terms of like, is Gara going to be freed by Shinki after everything's all done, or is Ryu going to be the one to free Gara? I don't actually know. The tease on Boruto potentially getting involved is obviously an interesting one, where somewhere along the way, something is not going to go as planned. Someone's going to get involved when they're not maybe completely required. My guess is that they probably actually might end up doing something with kind of Ada and also Mamushi, just because that's the one that has the least amount of setup overall. So I think we definitely need some stuff to happen in that regard. So yeah, that's basically everything I wanted to say about the chapter. Pretty good, not the most heavy on advancement, but I like what they overall did, and I'm pretty excited for the next couple of chapters to see how it all plays out, in terms of like the characterization for Matsuri and even Ryu, to see how it actually works. The Sarada thing of her being distracted by what Sumire said, they didn't really do much with it, and I'm not sure where they're going to get to really cover that until after this is all done and resolved. But we'll see what they have going on there. I hope it's more than just like all the female characters just have crushes and that's all they're doing. I think it probably is, because there is more nuance to the whole, like, what Sumire sort of almost like called Sarada out for. That yes, there is the Boruto kind of connection, but there's also just, think about my feelings, think about what that means, the whole, do you just think of me as the class rep type thing, that whole situation. So let me know what your thoughts were on chapter 17, but that's been the video. Thanks for watching, and bye.